Let's go into a special topic for this volume 3. This is the topic, it's a short topic, but it's an important one. This is the topic of mat returns in the sport of jiu-jitsu. Now, when you hear the name mat returns, you typically think of the sport of American collegiate wrestling. Okay, very often in the sport of collegiate wrestling, we'll have an opponent in what's termed a referee's position, starting like so, and an athlete starts in bottom position like so, and another athlete starts behind him, and they'll work in various kinds of positions like so, and the referee will start them here. Okay, the idea is for the bottom player to try and stand back up to his feet and break contact and get back to a neutral position, while the top athlete tries to keep him down in various riding positions. That's an important part of the American collegiate style of wrestling. It's also an important element in jiu-jitsu because, of course, jiu-jitsu, like wrestling, allows athletes to score from behind an opponent. In the sport of judo, if I take someone down to this position, it scores nothing, because the only points that score in judo are those where my opponent's back touches the ground, or at least some part of his back touches the ground. Nothing is scored in the sport of judo when the knees, hands, and elbows touch the ground. In wrestling, you can get scores in this position. In jiu-jitsu, you can get scores in this position provided you keep one of your opponent's knees on the floor for 3 seconds. That means, if we're standing, if you hit any given random takedown in jiu-jitsu, let's say, for example, a single leg situation, okay? If I score a single leg on my training partner and I put his back down to the floor, if he accepts the bottom position, I score. So what do many of your opponents do? They know that the only way I score is if I keep his body on the floor for 3 seconds. His back on the, at least some part of his hips, back, or shoulders on the floor for 3 seconds. So what many of our opponents do is turn away and come up like so, okay? And as a result, there's no score. Now, say to me, I have to chase my opponent's back, okay? And if I can keep him broken down on one knee in this position for 3 seconds, I score. But let's be honest, guys, it's damn hard to keep someone who doesn't want to be held down like this on one knee for 3 seconds. 3 seconds is a long time in a fight. And when he fights his way back up to his feet, I have to have this ability to constantly return him to the mat. Every time he fights his way back up, I'm trying to return him back down to the floor using some of those methods that we looked at earlier in the video. He goes to walk away from me, for example. From here, we might use Diashi Harai as a method of mat return. So just like wrestling, in the sport of jiu-jitsu, the majority of mat returns are where you're behind your opponent. However, jiu-jitsu mat returns have one element which is absent in the sport of wrestling, and which is important for you as a developing jiu-jitsu athlete. These are mat returns where we face each other, okay? In the sport of wrestling, because there's no guard position, the overwhelming majority of mat returns are where you're behind your opponent. In jiu-jitsu, most of the time your opponent's facing you because guard is a big part of jiu-jitsu, arguably the biggest part. So we have a category of mat returns where we're facing each other, and these are very, very important. Let's look at a situation where, say, for example, I took my opponent down and he doesn't want to stay down. He's maybe played guard for a while and he feels like, hey, I don't want to be in bottom position, okay? If I have a guy down, playing open guard, if I play in a position like this, there's no pressure on my part to hold him down. There's no reason why Giancarlo couldn't just sit up from here, okay, and hike his way back up to his feet, and now we're back up and standing. So I may have scored my takedown, but presumably the reason you took someone down is so you could get top position, right? But now you just let him get right back up to his feet. You got to start all over again. What we need is the skill of keeping him down once you've put him down. If I'm looking for top position with my takedowns, I want to be able to maintain top position. It's no good if I want top position as part of my mat tactics, getting someone down, getting my score, and he stands right back up, and now he might score on me, okay? Once we get the takedown, we want to be able to keep that top position. So it's important that we have an effective strategy of returning my opponent to the mat when he's facing me in guard position. I don't want situations where I've taken him down, he just hikes back up to his feet, and now we're right back and standing again, okay? So what are some effective ways of returning an athlete to the mat when he stands up facing me? Well, one excellent method is the lapel and pant cuff method, okay? When someone goes to stand up, let's look at the mechanism of the hip heist. That's how they stand up. They heist on their hips. There's always going to be a stationary leg and a moving leg. The stationary leg plants on the floor and the bottom leg moves and they get up, then they build their base and they get to standing position and they're mobile again. Some people build up to a knee, some people go directly to their feet, okay? So, once again, there's a stationary leg and there's a moving leg. What we do is we take advantage of the fact that one of those legs is stationary. As you know, stationary targets are much easier to attack than moving targets. So when we have an opponent and I get a sense this guy wants to stand up, I'm going to hold right here at my training partner's collar. Now it's hard for me to control the moving leg, but very easy for me to grab the stationary leg. Now guys, let's come close to the camera. I need to be careful how I grip here. I'm not allowed to go inside my training partner's pant cuffs, like so. In addition, even if you were in the gym and no one was refereeing the match, I wouldn't recommend putting your fingers inside, because when we go to control someone's leg, the leg is the most powerful part of the human body. You don't want to risk your fingers by trying to hold and grips like this, where if he explosively kicks out, you can easily get your fingers twisted into a complete mess. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 4-finger grip on the outside of my training partner's cuff, which is perfectly legal and safe for your fingers and will enable you to bear the big, powerful forces of your opponent's leg without getting your delicate fingers wrecked. So, once again, we're here in front of my training partner and I get the sense this guy wants to stand up. So I come in here, I get my pant grip, making sure we grip legally outside the pant cuff. Second hand goes here. Now, as he speedily gets up to his feet, I just pick his leg up. Now, I'm controlling my opponent's head through my right hand, and I'm controlling the extremity of the leg through the left hand. If Giancarlo went to violently kick his leg out, you're controlling the end of the lever. Even if he went to limp his leg out in this direction, it would be very difficult. Now I start bringing his head down to my right. He goes action-reaction against that to bring his head back up and gives me an easy turn down to the left. Okay? I don't recommend you try to horsepower your opponent over in one direction. You might be able to do that on a weakling, but on a strong man, I suggest action-reaction and take him down to the side of the pant cuff. That's the easiest side. Why? It's harder for him to base out. Here, he can put his left hand on the floor and save himself. But his connection to me is through here. When he goes to put that hand on the floor, just put your hand, don't go down to your butt. Good. When he puts that hand on the floor, it's really easy for me just to switch legs and run him down and complete the takedown. Okay? So once again, we're playing guard. And I get the sense this guy's getting antsy. Maybe I'm doing a good job passing guard and he's having a hard time, and I get the sense he's going to heist. So I just come down and pick up the leg. As he gets up to his feet, I immediately start running him out of position. Then I come back in the opposite direction and we get a beautiful mat return down to the floor. Okay? Now, why is this such a mechanically efficient method? Think about the human body as a lever. Okay? It's a damn long lever. In this case, it's over 6 feet tall. Okay? This grip here controls one end of the lever, up by the head. And this grip here controls the other extremity of the lever. So the entire length of the human body, from feet to floor, is controlled. Okay? When you go to exert forces, you're exerting those forces at both ends of the lever. And as a result, if we're in an athletic position, we're going to be able to move people very, very rapidly and easily. And it's hard for him to resist this. As he fights movement in one direction, he'll always give up movement in the other direction. And that's why this is such a mechanically efficient way to control the return to the mat. So let's say from open position, I score a knockdown with, say, Kouchigari. Okay, so we've got two athletes working with each other, and then from here, I come in and I hit Kouchigari, I put him down to the floor. He gets up, and then he wants to stand back up to his feet. And then from here, we return him straight down to the floor. So you score the takedown. The mat return doesn't score, okay, because he has to come up for a certain amount of time, usually around 3 seconds, before you get the additional score. So you may not score off the mat return, doesn't matter. You kept him down. So you got your takedown, and then from there, you kept them down with the mat return from the front. So this adds a whole new category of mat returns. Normally, mat returns are seen in situations where we're behind people and we return them to the mat. Okay? But remember, Jiu-Jitsu has two categories of mat returns. We have rear mat returns, where we're behind people, and we have front mat returns, where we're in front of people, and we have to be effective in both. Okay? It's up to us as athletes to develop them both. Now, you might say, well, okay, coach, tell me about those rear mat returns. You said they're more common. Well, you will remember those from volume 1 of Feet to Floor. All of the reverse or rear takedowns that we looked at, for example, Yashi Harai from the back, when someone goes to walk away from us, as we follow, that would be an example of a mat return from the back. Tai Toshi from the back, we turn, get our man around the corner, and then from here, put him down to the floor. This would be another example of a mat return from the back. We saw a bunch of those in volume 1 of Feet to Floor. Now we're looking at the other extreme, mat returns from the front. And if I only had one method of returning someone to the mat from the front position for the rest of my life, I would unquestionably choose high lapel, low pant cuff. Okay? Because this controls the extremities of the lever of the human body. It turns your opponent's entire body into a very long lever. And it gets action-reaction. So that as I get my opponent moving to my right, I get a strong defensive reaction. As I come back the other way, we get a beautiful mat return. And guys, it's so simple for an obvious reason. When someone goes to get up, one leg is moving and one leg is stationary. That stationary leg is so easy to grab. Even as he goes to get up, you've already got him out of balance. As he goes to correct his head position, you go right in and you get your mat return. So efficient, guys. If you learn this simple method, you're going to suddenly find you have a newfound ability. Not only can you take someone down in jiu-jitsu, you can keep them down. And remember, guys, if you're going to be a guy who values top position, it's not enough just to take people down. You got to take them down, you got to keep them down. That's where the mat returns become so important. And because you're a jiu-jitsu athlete, you got to be able to do it from the back and you got to be able to do it from the front. When you can do those two things, you'll add a whole new world, a whole new skill to your takedown and standing game. Not only can you take a man down, you can keep him down. Guys, I want to talk to you about a special topic that no one ever addresses and turns out to be one of the most important topics in jiu-jitsu in the standing position. This is a topic that just completely flies under the radar, and yet in competition, this has the gravest consequences and often means the difference in winning and losing matches. This is the question of how to recover from failed takedowns. Let's understand something right from the start. Statistically, when you go for takedowns in any combat sport, whether it be wrestling, judo, sambo, jiu-jitsu, or what have you, the majority of takedown attempts fail. It's so important, I'm going to say it again. The majority of takedown attempts in combat sports fail. Just statistically, there's simply no denying this. The success rate of throws in international judo is actually below 20%. In over 80% of cases where you attempt to throw, you can reliably expect to fail against someone who's roughly your own size and skill level. Now, in judo and wrestling and most standing combat sports, the rules and the referee will protect you. So, for example, in the sport of judo, if I come in for a given throw and it fails for whatever reason, okay? If I come in on my man and from this position, I come in and the throw fails. He steps around the throw. It's smart for me to go down to a turtle position because I know in a short period of time, even if my opponent jumps on my back, if I just stay here and I don't get put on my back, the referee will intervene in a very short period of time, somewhere around 5 to 10 seconds, and save me. Okay? Similar things can be said in the sport of wrestling. It's a little bit different in wrestling. If we get into a situation where you're standing, buddy, and I get into a given takedown, he sprawls on me. If I just hold on here and dog it out, I can go into a situation where he doesn't score on me and I don't score on him. If I just hold, and time goes by, the referee will intervene. and he will pull us out and start us again in the neutral position. Okay, so you can stall out of a failed takedown in most combat sports. But there's one important exception. You guessed it, jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, neither the rules nor the referee will come to your aid. If you screw up a takedown, you got to dig yourself out of that hole you've created. No one's going to intervene on your behalf. That's a very, very important insight. That's why a lot of jiu-jitsu guys are a little afraid, a little gun shy to try takedowns. Often jiu-jitsu players get a lot of flack for the lack of takedowns attempted in tournaments. And you'll hear people say, oh, these jiu-jitsu guys, they're all cowards. They come in, they sit to guard, and they're all a bunch of pussies. They never attempt takedowns. Well, a big part of it is the simple reflection that statistically, even the best takedown artists in the world fail more often than they succeed with their takedowns. Okay, that's true even with the best people in the world. They're not penalized for failure. The referee and the rules will protect them. But we are. So unless you're absolutely certain that you're going to be pretty damn successful with your takedowns in the sport of jiu-jitsu, we get gun shy about failing with takedowns because we can get scored on. Think about the consequences of a failed takedown in jiu-jitsu, okay? We just saw it in judo. If I fail with my drop seoi-nage, hold on 5 seconds, referee's going to help you out, you'll be fine, don't worry. Let's imagine a match has just started, we're 5 seconds in, I get to my initial grips with my training partner, I pull him around the corner, I come in for seoi-nage, and it goes to hell, and now the match is 30 seconds old, my training partner's right on my back. This guy spent his entire life practicing finishing and controlling the back. He gets 2 hooks and he gets the highest score in the sport. The highest score you can get, 4 points. The most I could have scored with my takedown was 2 points. Now he's got 4 points and he's in a position where he's got 9.5 minutes to strangle me. And no one's going to come to help me. Would you take that risk? Okay, that's a hell of a risk. Jiu-jitsu punishes risk on takedowns. Judo, wrestling, and sambo rewards risk. That's one of the most significant differences between our sport and all the other sports. I'll say this again. Whatever errors you incur in the standing position in jiu-jitsu, you got to dig yourself out of that hole you've created. No one's going to help you. And these are long matches, 10-minute matches. You come in for your first takedown in the first few seconds and it fails, you got 9.5 minutes of some guy who's spent his whole life dedicating the craft of finishing from the back, attacking your back. That's a hell of a hole to dig yourself out of. As a result, there is a skill that jiu-jitsu players have to develop. If you want to be known as someone who has good takedowns in jiu-jitsu, you have to be able to develop the skill of bailing out of a failed takedown without getting crushed. Okay, you can't play it the way you play in wrestling and judo, where you either just go into a defensive position like turtle and hold on for 5 seconds, or just grab a leg and wait for the referee to intervene. You got to have a proactive method of digging yourself out of the hole of failure. And my point to you is, there's a simple body movement, which all of you are already pretty good at, which will enable you to do this. And this is a simple shoulder roll, okay? If you stand behind me, champ. Anytime, whether my opponent is in front or behind me, if I feel my throw has run out of steam and my opponent stepped around, and you feel like the throw's failed, okay? I gotta have an exit strategy. This is not an exit strategy in jiu-jitsu. It's a good exit strategy in judo. It's not a good exit strategy in our sport. I will take whichever shoulder is closest to my opponent, and I have to have a hardwired reaction that when my throw fails, I will commit my shoulder to the floor and bring my legs between myself and my opponent and start bringing legs in, okay? At a minimum, I will now have a guard position where he doesn't score on me. And given that I was trying to take him down, presumably I'm looking for top position, otherwise I wouldn't have tried takedowns, I would have just sat the guard from the outset. I can get back to standing using a second method of hip heisting, where we create distance on a training partner, a frame hand, I put a foot on the floor, and from here I heist to either a knee or back up to my feet, and we return to the standing position. Okay? The two body movements associated with bailouts in jiu-jitsu are shoulder roll and hip heist, and those two are linked. Okay? At a minimum, you have to have the shoulder roll, because at least then you won't get scored on. You'll fail with the takedown, roll and put him back in guard. Not bad, you didn't get scored on. But presumably, guys, if you were trying to throw him, you wanted top position, right? So typically what we do is we combine a shoulder roll with a hip heist to get back up to standing, and then we get other attempts at the takedown until we get the score we're looking for. Okay, now let's quickly run you through some body mechanics. Okay, first, shoulder roll. We have an opponent here. The important thing is to understand I always roll on the shoulder that is closest to my opponent. In the heat of combat, this can change pretty quickly. Okay, if he's on my right side, it'll be my right shoulder that goes through and rolls. Most of the time, he will be down and you'll be in situations like this, because he did put some horsepower into the throw, right? So he's down here like so. In these situations, I can't just break contact. He spins to my back, and now he's probably going to score on us. Okay? So when we feel the throw has failed, there's still sufficient space between us. From here, we'll put our shoulder down and bring our hips and legs between us, so that from here, we can start to bring legs in. Now from here, we're back in a neutral position. You could just work from here. But presumably, when you went to throw him, you were looking actively for top position. So now we go into the hip heist, where we put a frame hand and a post hand. I have a static leg and a moving leg. The moving leg helps us get up, and now we're back up and standing. We're now in a position to go back into a second form of takedown attack. Okay? So we have to develop a hardwired reflex that whenever we feel failure with a takedown, shoulder roll, hip heist, get back to neutral. We can't do what everyone does in other grappling sports. You can't just come in on someone and from here, just do this kind of thing. You're going to lose a lot of matches. Pretty soon, you're going to get frustrated with takedowns. You say, every time I try a takedown, this guy gets my back and strangles me. And you're going to stop taking people down. Okay? You have to have an effective bailout strategy for failed takedowns in jiu-jitsu. There are different ways you can do it, but in my opinion, the safest, the most effective is the shoulder roll, usually followed by a hip heist. This will take you to a neutral position guard, and then the hip heist will take you to a neutral position standing. And then you can resume the standing position and go for more takedowns as time goes by. Okay, that's how you're going to get top position. It's how you're going to avoid getting scored on and strangled every time your takedowns fail. Please understand that this works ubiquitously. It works for any given takedown. I demonstrate out of Seoinage, it will work for anything. Okay, so let's say, for example, I try Ouchigari. Okay, we come out towards our training partner. I get my first hand on. I draw the man in, and from here I attack the Ouchigari that fails. He steps back on the legs. From here, there's distance between us. If I stay like this, he's going to run behind me. So we put shoulder down, roll through, legs come back in. Now from situations like this, we can heist, get back up to our feet, and then from here, go right back into our scoring situations, okay? You picture any given takedown. It'll work just fine. Say for example, Tai Toshi. I come in on a training partner, I draw him around the corner, I attempt Tai Toshi, he steps around it, I get pulled down to the mat. From here, we go straight on through, legs come in, and we're playing, working from position. So we come back up, standing, and then we're right again, back in action, okay? So let's go through what we need to develop as developing athletes to become effective with a strategy. There's 4 scenarios that you have to be able to perform this in. First scenario, my opponent is directly in front of me. In most cases, he will be down in a crouch and you've failed with your takedown. Say, for example, Ouchigari fails. I come in Ouchigari, he steps out and it failed. Okay? From here, I put one shoulder towards him. I go through and roll. My legs come in. We put them in a safe position, never like so, where he can start throwing my legs around, causing problems. We put the legs in, and from here, we're in a position to heist. If my opponent puts his chest on my back, Let's say, for example, I went in for a given takedown. He stepped down and pulled me down to this position. As he goes behind me, I'm already rolling through and bringing my legs in. And now we're in a position where we can come up to standing situation and get through to our scores. Okay? So we've got to be able to deal with the guy who's in front of us. Second scenario, the guys who are out to our side. This often occurs in throws like drop seoi-nage, for example. We come out with our training partner. From here I come in, I try seoi-nage, he's out to my side. As he runs around behind us, we go through, we're bringing legs in. From here, we get knockdowns and come back up to our feet and find ourselves in situations where we can go through, start knocking people down to the mat with a follow-up takedown. The next big one is where people are directly behind us. So for example, we come out with a training partner. I come in on my man. From here, I attempt osotogari. I hook and drive, and then he steps around behind me, and you're like, oh shit, he's got him right behind me. Look how his feet are forward on me. So from here, I hit my forward roll. I bring my 2 feet behind his legs. And as a result, he turns to face us, and we up to a hip heist, back up to neutral position, and then we can attempt subsequent takedowns from here, going in on our legs, etc., etc. Okay? So we have to be able to hit situations where he's in front, situations where he's out to the side, situations where he's directly behind me, and situations where he's behind me with his feet up by my knee line. Like so. When his feet are by my knee line, we roll through. When his feet are behind my foot line, then we switch in, bring our legs in, and find ourselves back in neutral position. Okay? So 4 situations. He's in front, he's out to my side, he's behind me, behind my foot line, he's behind me with his feet by my knee line. If you can deal with those 4 situations and rapidly roll using the shoulder roll method, usually followed by a hip heist, you're going to find that failed throws aren't such a burden. You can get back up to your feet and you can fight to live and win another day. What you can't do is just say, my takedown failed, let me just wait this out. That approach is not going to work. So as we come in on our man and I start in this position here, I can't just come down like so. There has to be that hardwired reflex, whereas the throw peters out, we come in and we get legs between him and us. Okay? Once the legs come in between him and us, now we're in a position where we can create distance, and from here go into various follow-up attacks that score points for us. That's our philosophy of bailouts in jiu-jitsu. You can't be complacent as you are in other sports. If you go into a kind of fail response where the takedown fails and you go into a defensive position, you will soon learn to dread takedowns. You will see takedowns as an avenue to failure in the sport of jiu-jitsu. That every time you try them, you get scored on. Not only do you get scored on, you get scored on in the worst possible way. You tried to score 2 points, the other guy scores 4, and now he's in the best position in the sport to strangle you. That's just an awful way to start any match. And given that jiu-jitsu matches can be anywhere up to 10 minutes long, you got to defend the back for 9.5 minutes. That's going to be a tough thing to do. Okay, so we've got to have an effective bailout strategy. The good news is it's a pretty easy strategy. It's just the same shoulder roll that you use down on the ground every day, applied in 4 scenarios: when he's in front, when he's to the side, and when he's to the back with his feet behind my feet, or when he's to the back with his feet in front of my knees. Shoulder roll followed by a simple hip heist that gets us back up to a neutral standing position will let you live to fight another day and get a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th attack until you get to your takedown. Statistically, understand that the majority of your takedown attempts will fail. That's just reality. Okay, that's not me being a pessimist, that's me being a realist. Okay, this is true regardless of how good your takedowns are. You show me the best judo players in the world, the best wrestlers in the world, and the majority of their takedown attempts end in failure. Now, granted, they're going against other people who are almost as good as they are, but still, in your case, you're matched by belt level and size, so you can expect more or less the same thing, right? You're also going against people who are roughly the same skill level as you and roughly the same size, just like they are. So the outcomes will be roughly the same. If you can reasonably hypothesize that the vast majority of your takedown attempts will end in failure, you better damn well have a good bailout strategy. Especially in a sport like jiu-jitsu, where there's no referee to protect you. There's no rule set to protect you. If you dig a grave, you got to dig yourself out of it. So you've got to have a good bailout strategy. This is such an important subject and no one ever talks about it. I can't believe it, because how could you possibly study takedowns in jiu-jitsu without having a strategy to protect yourself from failed takedowns, given that our sport goes out of its way to punish risk-taking, whereas all the other grappling sports go out of their way to protect and reward risk-taking. It's one of the fundamental divergencies between jiu-jitsu and other grappling sports. Our sport punishes risk. All the other sports reward risk. So you have to have a way of reducing risk. And this simple strategy of automatic shoulder roll and hip heist will protect you anytime your takedown doesn't work as well as expected.